The Sci-Horror Film Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Sci-Horror Film Podcast. I almost forgot what we were doing there for a minute.
Glad one of us remembers. Oh, well, one of us remembers.
Sort of. Yes, I am Andy Walker, as some of you may know. If you're new to the podcast, where have you been? And what time do you call this? If you're not new to the podcast, hello again. Oh, you went all blurred there for a minute.
Yeah, I'll poke myself in the eye.
Blur. I am here as I almost always am. Almost always am with my son Scott. Hello, Scott.
Hello there.
Hello. How are you?
I'm right. Feeling a little bit refreshed and better than I was the other week.
Good. Glad about that.
Mm.
Got rid of all your snottiness and horribleness?
No, I've got a permanent. I think I've got a permanent cold. I think this is probably my hay fever runs at the end of when everyone else's does. So like sort of September, November, December time when all the pollen count starts going down for everything else. The stuff that I'm allergic to then goes through the roof.
Right.
It doesn't help as well that there's a house full of flowers at the moment. So
yeah. Well, okay. We are therefore we think. No. Yes. So we are this week looking at two short science fiction films and a longer film which is kind of science fiction-y horror-y. It's kind of I don't know, it's one of those ones that sort of straddles the line, as it were. Yes. Anyway, don't know what I'm talking about. So let's just get going. Let's get into it, shall we? I might as well. Okay.
I say, if you to actually know what you're talking about, make a change for 1 week.
Lord alone knows what's going on in my head or the world. I'm not sure which is most confused at the moment. So the first film we are looking at is a short science fiction film. And when I say short, I mean short.
Yes.
It's called, from 2022, it's called Why Are They Here? It's Journey Home Media. And it was apparently inspired by the 2016 sci-fi film Arrival. And it's filmed on the Red Komodo, whatever the hell that means. I don't know.
And that's something people used to wear in the 70s.
No, that's a kimono.
Oh.
Red Komodo sounds to me like some kind of sex toy, but I don't know. A very large vibrating lizard. There is no synopsis for this or any list of who's in it or why or anything. So, what did you think?
Oh, nothing's to the top of that comment. I genuinely, and for God's sake, bear in mind how short it was, and it is just over a minute, I think, if I remember rightly. Yeah. I actually really liked it.
Okay.
So, I don't know. I think it was one of, because of the fact I didn't read the synopsis like I do normally. So I didn't realise about the fact it was inspired by one of the films. But I sat there like, sort of just left me wanting to know more what was going on.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's my problem. This is possibly the shortest film I think that we've actually reviewed. Literally, I think it's 1 minute 8 seconds or something
Yeah.
ridiculous. Um, I mean, it's okay. The effects are pretty good, but my problem with it is that it's so short that nothing really happens.
No, it just
So you kind of watch it and go, okay. I mean, my first thought was it's called "Why Are They Here?" and I thought, why was this made? Why is it here?
well,
Because
I did get to the sort of watching it, and it got to almost the end, and I was like, "Is this about just the bloke? Like,
uh,
why is he here? It's just that's his house." But and then obviously then he turns around and sees the ship, and I was like, "Oh, okay, that makes
film
sense."
Arrival is quite good, and the ship in this film does look like the one in Arrival, and I kind of see it's sort of like somebody in their house who sees the ship arriving, blah blah. But nothing happens,
No,
and it all just seems a bit like and
it does seem
and
like it's sort of a trailer to something.
I
Like it
don't
would have been better to be used as a trailer for something than an
part
actual,
of a trailer to something.
yeah, than actually say it's a short film.
It does say it's just to me, it's just so short that nothing happens, and so it's kind of like, yeah,
Mm,
I don't
I
know.
get that.
I mean, as I say, the effects are pretty good, and it's not badly made. It's
No,
not, it's not a bad film. It just nothing happens in it, so I don't see quite. Yeah, there you go. The second film is also from 2022. This is called The Outlier, made by Luke Dewar, or Dewar, um, and it sort of stars him. Um, and it was made during lockdown, I believe. Now, the synopsis for this says John is unknowingly brought back to life in an unusual dystopian place. He is introduced to a robot with sinister undertones and meets a terrible fate. Yeah. It's got some kind of humor to it.
yeah.
The effects are okay, but not fantastic. Um, so it's kind of funny-ish a bit.
Mm.
I couldn't make my mind up if it was supposed to be a sci-fi comedy that isn't funny enough, or a sci-fi drama that's got too much comedy in it.
Yeah, I get that. It's you know what the thing is, it was genuinely annoying. Like, I sat there and by the look to it, it was used a bit of a green screen effect, I think.
Yeah.
But it was. I've seen green screen effects where it's a lot better, sort of contrasted together than that, and it seemed very obvious. Like, don't be wrong, the graphics that they used for the room and the robot and everything else, I thought was great. But the overlay of him on the screen, just it was obvious that it wasn't there.
Yeah, it didn't look fantastic.
No, and
Um,
I don't know. I think it's very well done because the robot voice is actually done by a text to speech
yeah.
bit. So it's them typing it all out, and it's obviously doing that way. And I think that's a very smart way of doing it.
Hmm.
But I don't know. I do agree with you. It just if it was a comedy, it was trying too hard, and if it was meant to be as a sci-fi drama, again, it was trying too hard. It just
Yeah.
I like the sound. I like the effects of it, especially once he drops off the chair and through the hole. Admittedly, that is then the credits and everything like
The
that.
weird
But
thing about it was when he dropped it through the hole, it actually looked like the opening scene of a film when they were coming down from the roof of a nightclub or something. So I don't know.
the only bit that annoyed me, and I realised that I'm a lot more picky about films than I care to admit sometimes. But when he drops down from the hole, the camera then follows him into a lot of pipe section.
Yeah.
And the first thing that went through my head was them pipes wouldn't fit him in.
But what the thing, I mean, the end was a little bit sudden.
Yeah,
And it was a bit non as well, really, because it was like I was expecting something to happen before the end, and it just kind of like ended. And I thought, oh,
yeah.
okay,
I went through the rest of the credits just in case they'd done something like put it on the end of the
yeah,
put a little clip on the end of it or something. And I was like, I did feel the same. I was like, it's a little bit disappointing.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. There you go. Right, so on to our feature film. Our feature film this week is from 1981. We do seem to be doing a lot of 80s stuff this year.
Oh, I'm so glad you've said that.
Maybe have to try and get some that aren't so many 80s films for next season. But 1981, and this is a fantastic film, well known, called Scanners. Now,
Fantastic. I would use very loosely.
well, it depends on your point of view, but there you go. Right. It was written and directed by David Cronenberg. Now, David Cronenberg did a lot of TV shorts and TV stuff in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 2000s, and 2010s. Now, he was the writer and director of most of these films, but some of them he was only the writer of, or some of them he was only the director of. So I'm just going to go through the whole lot because it's easier. Okay. We've got Crimes of the Future in 1970, Shivers in 1975, Rabid 1977, The Brood in 1979, Videodrome in 1983, The Fly 1986. I'm sorry, I missed one out. Dead Zone 1983, The Fly 1986, Dead Ringers 1988, Scanners 2, The New Order 1991, Scanners 3, The Takeover 1991. Scanner Cop, which was straight to video in 1994, Scanner Cop 2, straight to video in 1995, Existence in 1999, Crimes of the Future in 2022, and a film called The Shrouds, which hasn't actually come out yet.
Okay.
The cast for this is Jennifer O'Neill, who did some TV stuff in the 90s. She was also in The Reincarnation of Peter Proud in 1975, Murder to the Tune of the Seven Black Notes in 1977, and Time Changer in 2002. And we have the main character, which is quite incredible. It's Stephen Lack. The only other thing that he's done that's anything to our sort of stuff is Dead Ringers in 1988. It's kind of weird. Then we have Patrick McGowan, who did some TVs and shorts in the 60s, including obviously The Prisoner, which is the thing he's probably best known for. That he was in Hysteria in 1997 and Treasure Planet in 2002. Then we have Lawrence Dane, who did some TV and shorts in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s. He was in The Clown Murders in 1976, Rituals 1977, Happy Birthday to Me in 1981, Of Unknown Origin in 1983, Millennium in 1989, Darkman 2, The Return of Durant in 1995, which went straight to video, Bride of Chucky in 1998, and Behind the Wall in 2007. Then we have, now I'm sure we've done him before, Michael Ironside. I'm sure we've done him before, but I will go through this all again because I can't remember when we did him. So we did TV short stuff in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and 2020s. He was in Visiting Hours in 1982, American Nightmare 1983, Space Hunter Adventures in the Forbidden Zone in 1983, Hello Mary Lou Prom Night 2 in 1987, Watchers in 1988, Total Recall in 1990, Highlander 2 The Quickening 1991, Neon City 1991, The Vagrant 1992, Night Trap in 1993, Starship Troopers 1997, Heavy Metal 2000, but that was just a voice part. He played the voice for a computer. Mindstorm 2001, The Shaft 2001, which is also known as Elevator, I think. Children of the Corn Revelation 2001, which straight to video. Soulkeeper 2001, which was the voice but uncredited. Fallen Angels 2002, Maximum Velocity 2003, Rika 2005, Bloodsuckers in 2005, Mutants 2008, Terminator Salvation 2009, The Beacon 2009, Lake Placid 3 2010, X-Men First Class 2011, Agency of Vengeance Dark Rising, that was the one we did before,
Yes.
in 2011, Ice Soldiers 2013, Extraterrestrial 2014, Desecrated 2015, Children of the Fall in 2016, Stillborn 2017, Alterscape 2018, Death Planet Rescue 2018, The Covenant 2018, Helmington in 2018, Bloodthirsty 2020, Tin Can 2020, Dracula the Original Living Vampire in 2022, and The Hounds at Hell's Gate, which hasn't come out yet.
Yeah.
Then we have Robert A. Silverman, who did some TV and short work in the 70s, 80s, 2000s. He was also in Rabid in 1977, The Brood 1979, Prom Night in 1980, Waterworld 1995, Existence in 1999, Jason X in 2001, and The Ruining in 2004, which was straight to video. So there you go. And the synopsis for this says, a scientist trains a man with an advanced telepathic ability called scanning to stop a dangerous scanner with extraordinary psychic powers from waging a war against non-scanners.
Yeah.
Now, I get the feeling from what you were saying that you weren't overly fond of this film.
There were parts of it I was like, I like the premise behind it. Obviously, especially after watching it, the whole idea of, because of the fact it's technically something that's happening now, the whole genetic modification sort of things.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that they had the science behind it and everything like that. It was a very 80s film for me.
It was quite an 80s film, I must admit. It's of its time.
Yeah, there were parts of it that I can see for the time a lot of people going, "Oh my god, that's amazing!" But I sat there and I was just like, "Okay." Like one of the scenes, sort of near the beginning, where the two security guard people that are transporting Michael Ironside's character gets shot,
Mm.
and one of them jumps back and sort of acts like he's been shot before he actually gets shot.
Yeah, well,
But I don't know. Just saying, I have my moments with it. It was a okay film for me. I think it's a typical for certain 80 films that we watched. It just seemed like there was a lot of build up and a long time going on before anything actually happened.
yeah, no, I know what you mean, but I think a lot of it was because they wanted to explain what was the behind the thing.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
The thing,
It's just,
for me is, I love this film because I mean it's just about the fourth time I've seen it now. Well, no, actually, it must be more than that over the years. I've been thinking about it a lot recently. There was something that made me think about this a few weeks ago. I was reading something purely based on how many of their films I really like. I think I'm going to have to say that it's kind of a tie for me between David Cronenberg and John Carpenter as to which is my favourite horror director. That's purely based on just how many of their films I like.
understandable. Okay, yeah.
I mean, I suppose, yeah, if I was a bit picky, I'd say that some of the effects are a bit naff. But for 1981, and John Cronenberg, David Cronenberg's films quite often were quite low budget, especially the early ones. For a 1981 low budget feature film, I think that they're not that bad.
Don't be right. I think for if it's a low budget film, I can. To be honest, if it is low budget, I can see where a lot of their budget went based on the amount of explosions they have.
Yeah, I think,
Because my big thing, and I want to know, maybe that's why there's not a lot of telephone boxes around anymore. But why the telephone box near the end blew up?
well, I think it was just the whole force of everything from his mind and the
Oh,
computer.
I sort of go with that. But part of me sat there for a little bit and went, I wonder if that's why they got rid of them all. Because there was something in them that could have just blown up.
No, weird. It's a thing. I mean, the thing about David Cronenberg films, unlike John Carpenter had this habit of it. He would make films, and the budget he had went on the effects and everything. David Cronenberg had this kind of thing of like trying to get at least one well-known actor into each of his films. It's like The Brood had Oliver Reed in it.
Yeah.
And things like that. So I think a lot of his budget went on things like getting one well-known actor in that would sell the film a bit more, and also things like it costs quite a bit to have a helicopter come in and land in a field because
I've got to admit
helicopters
though,
are
I've got to
bloody
admit
expensive to,
I've got to admit for stunt-wise films that I've seen, that the people around that helicopter,
yeah,
not bearing in mind, like we said, the effects and a lot of things, especially for 80s films, because that was still the sort of time where they were doing it on film, and it still cost a lot to do it on the film.
yeah.
The fact that there was probably not been able to do that many takes of it, land a helicopter in a ring of people without any of them flinching, moving,
Oh
and
yeah,
standing
yeah.
pretty. Maybe some of them, I doubt any of them were mannequins because of the fact they would have fallen over.
No,
But to
no.
do that and just none of them flinch and none of them do anything, I think was very well done.
I think the other thing for me is the fact that there are a few bits where the acting isn't fantastic, and as you say, things like that guy. But, but given the fact that most of the cast weren't that experienced at that
No,
time, I mean, Patrick McGowan was probably the most experienced out of all of them
yeah,
at that time. So you kind of, it's not a bad film. I
I've
still find it an enjoyable film to watch.
got me watching this film now because I've seen a lot of films with Michael Ironside in, especially a lot of his later stuff where
Yeah,
it obviously looks very old and very sort of. So don't want to say tired, but you know what I mean. That look.
yeah, yeah.
But it is remarkable that in his earlier years, when the age he is in this, how much he looked like Jack Nicholson.
Yes, well, I think that was the thing. I think that's one of the things that they kind of tried to sell him on, was it
Yeah,
was like the new Jack Nicholson or something.
but I do. I've got to admit though, apart from some of the effects and odd little bits, yeah, it was an okay film.
Yeah.
I think there's bits of it that haven't stood the test of time, sort of effects wise and acting, like you said, but it's still an okay film.
So I mean, I think I would say more than that, but it's just, I mean, it is I think it's a generational thing because you're used to seeing things that are so much better put together, if you like.
Yeah, I suppose that's one of the things I was trying to take that into effect. The fact that a lot of the films, especially from when I like the first films I remember,
Yeah,
they were still. Obviously, I remember growing up watching some of the older films with you, but there were a lot of like the newer films that I was watching myself. That a lot of the effects that they were using was almost state of the art, and even some of them now look very dated.
yeah, yeah,
And like these are ones that were like early 2000s. So for it to only be a couple of things from the 80s, which is
yeah, yeah,
40 years ago, is a good thing. The fact that there's the effects. Like, I've got to admit, and I will say, the effects they used at the end when Michael Ironside and I can't, my mind's gone blank what the other guys were
yeah,
having their sort of telekinetic fight,
yeah.
and the veins were popping up in their face, and I thought was amazing.
It was incredible
And
the way their
like,
face was distorted and all
yeah,
that.
there's still in it, even when he pulls his like grabs his hand down his face, and you can see the whole like
Yeah,
his skin fall away. I thought that was amazing. Like I've seen films nowadays that I look at and I go, "Well, that's obviously fake."
yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's like I know it all is, but it's the fact that you can sit there like you can at least make it look like that sort of point where you go, "Is it?" But that didn't cross my mind once. It's like I was like, that was genuinely amazing.
yeah. It was really good, and I think the thing for me is it's got quite a good mix of this kind of sci-fi stroke horror element, kind of weirdness to it,
Yeah,
especially like the. I mean, whoever they got to do the artwork for that guy who was supposed to be the sculptor, that artwork was incredible.
yeah,
And that weirdness for that sort of thing was brilliant. And it's also got a good mix of action in it. There's car chases and fight scenes, and it's got that in it as well. The other thing I think about it for me was it didn't feel like it, although I understand what you're saying about having a slow build up. It at the end of it, I didn't feel like it had dragged. I didn't honestly feel like I've been sitting there for like an hour. Was it hour and 47 minutes?
yeah, better.
I didn't feel I'd been sitting there that long watching that.
No, I've got to admit, there were moments where I think like moments in it where I sat there and thought to myself, it's just taking a while. But yeah, the whole way through it, it wasn't like at the end of it, I didn't sit there and go, this is almost 2 hours that I'm not getting back. But
Yeah,
it's the fact that sitting there and it was like, okay, yeah, it stretched out and it took a long while to build up. But when it did get to that build up and then carried on from there, it wasn't disappointing.
No,
The
I
actual sort of peak moment, and then from then on, I thought was very well done and very sort of. It wasn't crammed into like 10 minutes. It was stretched out over like sort of 40, 50 minutes.
I mean, as I say, I've watched this a number of times. I say it's got to be more than 5 times I've seen this film over the years, and I haven't seen it for a while. But I wasn't I wasn't disappointed in it. I didn't go into it thinking, "Oh, I remember this being such a fantastic film." I remember it
Yeah,
being a good film. I enjoyed watching, and when I came out to the end of it again, I watched. Well, I thought, well, that was a good film that I enjoyed watching. It hasn't sort of changed my opinion of it in any way.
yeah.
Um, it's not the greatest film in the world, but I really enjoyed watching it, and I think if you've never seen it before, I think you'd really enjoy it. If you
Mm.
have seen it before, it's great to sort of renew that kind of thing because, as I say, having not seen it for quite a few years, there were bits of it I'd forgotten, and there were elements of it that I thought, actually, I really like that. It was really clever or really good, you know.
Yeah, so this is what I'm just saying. This is my first, I think, my first time watching it. But I'm saying the fact that for me it was only odd little bits that sort of I was a bit disappointed in.
Yeah,
And this is like you said, it's a generational thing. The fact that like when I growing up for me when I started watching films and a lot of the horror and sci-fi films, there was a lot of advances in technology for graphics, for effect, for cinematography, everything. So
yeah.
it's sort of a bit of a films like that is sort of almost seem like a sort of ancestry thing for a lot of them. But as I said, for a 40-year-old film, there is a lot of stuff in it that still to this day looks amazing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And the other thing about it is the fact that there's a great book which you can read. It's called "The Zombies That Ate Pittsburgh,"
Yeah,
and it's all about the behind the scenes stuff, the George A. Romero films. But a lot of it's to do with the special effects that were done by Tom Savini and
yeah,
his crew. And they were saying that they were they were involved in some of the special effects for Scanners.
yeah,
They didn't do all of these special effects, but they were involved in them. And the way that there's a bit at the beginning where this guy's head explodes,
oh yeah,
and the way they did that was apparently they got condoms, filled them with livers and intestines from offcuts from a butcher's, right?
yeah,
And then they put a little detonator, you know, the ones that they use for bullet shots.
yeah,
The bullet the detonator goes off and the blood
yeah.
capsule burst open. They got those and they put one of those into each one of the condoms and they tied them up. Then filled a dummy head with them, with the cables all coming out the bottom. Sat it on this dummy, had the cables down the back, and then just blew them all in one go.
This is what one of the things I do. I have realised that there has been a lot of with the changes in it. There are some good and bad ones. Like nowadays, you can set like you can click a couple of buttons on the computer and make that all happen. And there's people like the special effects team that do stuff like that.
Yeah,
But their trade is almost becoming sort of non-existent now because of the fact that unless it's close-up stuff or small movies, it's not really seen in that many movies now. But
yeah,
as I was saying, for that, that is one of the scenes that I actually that stuck with my head because of the fact that there wasn't any build up to it. Obviously, you tell some of the symptoms that can happen and what you feel. And I
yeah,
sat there and I could see him travel, but something's going to happen. He's going to either pass out or he's going to throw up. And then when his head popped, and I just sat there like, oh,
yeah. But
I
that's the
was
thing.
not expecting that at all.
I think that's the scene most people remember from the film because it's so early on in the film
Yeah,
and it's so unexpected that you kind of go, "What the?"
yeah. It was. It's the thing is, I think it's like the first 10 minutes of it,
Yeah,
really. And you're sitting there and it's like, oh, okay, they're going to build it up, and then that happens. And I sat there like, how? I genuinely sat there like, how are they going to top this? Because normally that happens sort of halfway through, and then they can sort of top it a little bit before the end. But like, this is right in the beginning.
yeah,
But as I say, it's just there was a lot of bits in it that I thought there were bits of it that sort of let it down a little bit, but sort of missed timings. But other than that, there were parts of it I genuinely was amazed by.
yeah. No, I know. I think it's a great film. I think it's a good film. It's one of these films that I can sit and enjoy watching
Yeah,
without, you don't have to think too much about it, but you can enjoy the action, you can enjoy the effects and all that kind of thing. And it's just a good sort of a good film, I think.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there you go. We have Why Are They Here? And that was a very good question as far as I'm concerned. Um, the Outlier, which I still don't quite know why it was called the Outlier. Anyway, and Scanners, which we both agree is a good film, although I think it's better than you do. But there you go. It's
I
one of
have
those things.
I have got something to add though, and
But
I have realised from doing all these films that we've done that the naming of films has gone downhill. Like especially, so you think from like 90s onwards, or no, actually, I say from 2000 onwards, the naming of films seems really boring compared to some of the other ones.
yeah,
Like
no,
you sit there and read out the films that people have been in. You can take 5 minutes just to read one film sentence.
I
With some
know.
of the ones from like the 70s and
Yeah,
80s.
70s and 80s films. Some of them have just got the most fantastic names. I mean, not just the horror films either.
No,
It's like today I was looking at some stuff on YouTube and I was and I found a film which is it's a kind of slightly bizarre 60s film, and it's called If This Is Tuesday, It Must Be Belgium. I mean,
see, this is what I love. I love going through and watching some of the like seeing some of the films that people have been in because you go, oh yeah, I know him from like I said, like especially like Michael Weinstein, like
yeah,
yeah, I know him from Starship Troopers or from Highlander. Yeah, they're amazing. And then you sit there and look back and go, he was in what?
yeah,
Why did they name it that? And like, it's many times you sit there like, I want to watch the film purely just to see why it's called what it is.
yes. I know exactly what you mean. Some of them are fantastic, and I really still don't understand why some of them are called what they're
No,
called.
because
Um,
I've watched a couple of films with like purely for the fact that when you sit there and go, it ain't that I need to look see why. And you get to the end of the film and go, what's that got to do with what it's called?
Well, the other thing is I find quite funny is when they take a book with a really fantastically, amazingly interesting title, and then they kind of call it something quite dull. And it's like, for me, one of the epitome of those are two films in particular, which is Blade Runner.
Yeah,
Blade Runner, the original book for that is called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which is a fantastic
it
title.
is. Yeah,
And Total Recall, the original book for that is called We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, which is just like, what does that mean?
yeah. See, that would have been a hell of a lot better film. That would have made up for Arnold Schwarzenegger's acting.
But yeah, I just like I love titles for films
Yeah,
and
it's just,
things.
to say it's just reading some of the other ones that people have been in, and I sat there and looked at them. I'm like, someone must have got to the point with like, and sort of mainly about the 2000s when they've gone, look, we need to speed these up because it takes people too long to read them.
Well, I think the thing is they've kind of gone back because in the 60s, in the 50s, well, I say 50s, 40s, 50s, and early 60s, right? There was a lot of the films were what they were called. It's like sort of, the old dark house. It's about an old dark house.
Yeah,
The House on Haunted Hill. It's about a house that's on top of a hill that's part of a graveyard that's haunted. It's kind
yeah,
of Last House on the Left is about the last house on the left on a road. So, do you know what I mean?
yeah,
And I think they then went through a thing in the late 60s, 70s, and 80s where they gave these films really strange, weird titles. And then in the 90s, they kind of carried on, but kind of started going, we need to change this. And then they went back to this whole thing of like, we'll just call it something that's direct and to the point of what the film is.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah. No, I get that. It's just the same. I sit there, and I look at some of the films now, especially some of the films that I like from sort of the last 20 years, and I'm like, you're really, really boring in name.
yeah,
And then there's films that, like the main one that I remember watching you was obviously Attack of the Killer Tomatoes.
yeah,
It is a film that's blatantly and to the point. But it's the fact that I look at films like that nowadays and I'm like, your names are really boring compared to stuff like
yeah. But then, I mean, it wasn't exactly the most sensible of films.
that. No. Obviously, there were a lot of films from that time that weren't the most sensible of films.
Well, next week we have a mix. We have a short horror, a short science fiction, and a horror film, which is an anthology film, but I have never seen. So we got it's called From a Whisper to a Scream. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So that should be good. Good. And things like that. So thank you very much, Scott, for being part of this tired, relentless drivel that is our lives.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something else then. Yeah, that's fine. It's
I
not
know I
that
don't know why I
tired and
said that.
relentless. Sometimes it's sweet.
Sometimes it's short, sweet, and boring.
Yeah.
Other times it's margarine.
So for the things as well, what makes this even worse is just off camera for me, and just the way it is that Amy's sitting to the right of me, and all I can hear is every now and again with certain comments you're making is her sniggering and laughing.
Well, there you go. So on behalf of myself and my son and Tor, the pet badger,
So the pet tame badger, yes.
and things like that, we would like to thank you for watching, listening, being part of our whatever
Madness.
we are doing, and we will be back. Yes, we will
Yes.
be back. Until then, thank you and goodbye. Bye.
Bye.
The Sci-Fi Film Podcast.